Have you ridden the bus lately?
Oh, of course. I've probably ridden Hart 24 times. You meet the most interesting people. I met a gentleman who came from Cuba. He'd been here for only a few months, and he actually worked at the University Mall where we're at, which is funny. It's a very small world.
Welcome to Talk to Your Government. I'm your host, Becky Yetaw, and today we have a distinguished guest who's been a driving force in our local community. He's a true advocate for inclusive economic development, mass transit, veterans, first responders, and the differently abled. Joining us on Talk to Your Government today is Tampa City Councilman Luis Viera. Born and raised in the Temple Terrace area, Councilman Viera is a graduate of the University of South Florida and Stetson College of Law. He represents New and North Tampa in the Tampa City Council and is here to share his insights and engage in a meaningful conversation about the issues that matter most in our community. So sit back, get ready to connect with your government, and let's dive into today's discussion with Councilman Luis Viera. Welcome to the show, Luis Viera.
Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure being here today.
Well, I'm so glad you could make it.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. I always love to engage and talk about what's happening in city government and in our community.
Well, we're so glad to have you. When did you join the council?
So I joined in December of 2016. It was a special election due to a vacancy in city council. And I made it to a runoff. And I won my first race by 65 votes.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Very close.
Very close, yeah.
So I limped into office.
So some of your special projects have to do with ordinances around apprentices.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, well, that was something I had a real pleasure in working on. You know, apprenticeships are so important here in the city of Tampa. We got to make sure that our young people know that just because you don't go to college doesn't mean that you're not going to have a productive career. You have the skilled trades in things like welding and things like pipe fitting and things like electrical work, carpentry, etc. And it really behooves us as a city, as a community, as a state to encourage young people to go into the skilled trades.
Yes,
that's very important. It creates a pathway to the middle class. You know, when people come to us and talk about things like upward mobility and wanting, all people want to do is to make sure that they have the tools to improve their own life. And that's what this comes to. So we passed an ordinance. I worked with contractors and then with labor unions for about half a year before coming out with it, that says that if you have a contract with the city of Tampa over $1 million, then 12% of your workforce should be from a state certified apprenticeship program. We have exceptions for good faith efforts, different things like that for small businesses, some accommodations there. But the overall idea is to push apprenticeships in the city of Tampa for the skilled trades. Again, it's an issue of economic opportunity. We're using the power of government to help people improve their own lives, and I think the vast majority of people can support that.
How does that improve working families and the workforce?
Yeah, well, it gives people hope and better access to opportunity and to training. If you take a young person right now graduating from King, graduating from Jefferson, graduating from wherever it may be, right? A lot of times folks are led to believe that there's no future for them, right? You take some of these skilled trades apprenticeships where you start off as a trainee, learning skills on the job, earning $15, $16 an hour, learning the skills that are going to give you that lifeline or that pathway to the middle class. You expand that for young people, and you give young people, especially in a lot of our marginalized communities, a pathway out through education and through hard work. And that's what government should do. We always have a debate on the role of government, and I always say that government is here to empower people with the things that they can't attain on their own that are life needs.
Yeah.
And for me, access to training and education is such an issue.
Yeah, because it impacts everyone.
Oh yeah, amen, absolutely.
Is Tampa a hub of industry that uses apprenticeships?
Absolutely, we're a growing area. The city of Tampa and the larger Tampa area continues to grow. Post-COVID, we've grown at alarming and disturbing rates. And with that growth comes a lot of building, right? And with things like building comes an increased need for things like welding jobs, electrical jobs, carpentry, et cetera. So absolutely we're a growing city, and with that provides economic opportunities. We want to make sure that the young people in our city know that there is life after high school and that you can have access to a middle class lifestyle. It's going to require a lot of hard work and education, but that's what the American dream's all about, or what it should be all about.
You have some special interest in the differently abled.
Sure.
And you've done some work in allowing accessibility to parks. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, a very personal issue for me. So my oldest brother, Juan, is mentally disabled. Juan's 52 and has a capacity of like a 4-year-old. And so I grew up with organizations like Special Olympics, McDonald's Training Center, et cetera. My brother works at McDonald's Training Center, in fact. And, you know, that creates in you a sense of empathy and compassion for people, not just people with disabilities, but just anybody who's excluded. And so whenever I see someone who's excluded, I think about Juan. But that's the important thing in public office, is that we all have our voice. We have a voice from our life experiences, whatever it may be, and you got to bring that voice, because nothing works in public office like sincerity and passion. And so one of my issues I'm very passionate about are people with disabilities. So one of the things I've worked at doing is a number of things. Number one, we built in New Tampa a all abilities park. I was working on that for 5 years, and it's the first City of Tampa park fully funded by the City of Tampa that is geared towards people with special needs, sensory challenges, physical challenges, et cetera. I worked on that for 5 years, and we did the ribbon cutting just recently, because, you know, things take time. I'm also making sure that all City of Tampa parks have are fully accessible, so that all parks, whether it's in Seminole Heights, in East Tampa, the USF area, South Tampa, wherever it may be, have accessibility, so that if a young mother or father takes their child who may have autism, who may be in a wheelchair, have cerebral palsy, whatever it may be, that they won't be excluded. And then lastly, one of the things I'm also working on is creating, and we got it in the budget, knock on wood, is a $15 an hour training program, an internship program for people with intellectual disabilities in the City of Tampa. We have to lead, and we can, you know, St. Francis of Assisi once said, preach always, speak if you have to, right? It's good for us to speak, but let's invest our dollars in helping people like my brother become independent and make sure that their moms and their dads know that they have a home here in Tampa. It's about belonging, and that's something I'm very passionate about.
That's wonderful. What kind of, what's different about the park? I don't understand the words that you use to describe the difference in the park.
Accessibility.
Yeah.
So that's a great question, because, you know, sometimes you presume things. So there's two big issues, which is number one, physical accessibility.
Yeah.
So all of the items in the All Abilities Park, which is located in New Tampa, are accessible to a child in a wheelchair, right? So if you have mobility problems, et cetera, you can use it just like somebody who can run can use it. And then the park is in a very silent area where the colors and the schemes in the park are very sensory friendly, because when you have an individual who has autism, they have sensory challenges, and things like bright lights, things like bright colors, et cetera, can affect them in a way that don't affect somebody with sensory challenges. So it is accommodated such that children with disabilities have a home there. But my view is, number one, parks like that should be throughout all of the City of Tampa, and all of our parks ought to have accessible equipment for folks with mobility challenges.
Absolutely. How many parks do we have? Do we need more parks?
Oh, that's a great question. We got a lot of parks. Many parks. They recently did a parks master plan in the City of Tampa, looking at the 4 areas of Tampa: North Tampa, East Tampa, West Tampa, South Tampa. North Tampa actually had the fewest number of city parks. Part of it is because New Tampa, that occupies a lot of North Tampa area, is relatively new to the city, about 30 years old, more or less. But we do have a lot of parks. I think it's council's intent to create parks in areas where we need more city parks, but to improve the ones that we have by making sure we have good maintenance and accessibility for people with disabilities.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It'd be great if we had parks within walking distance of everyone in the
Absolutely.
City.
Yeah, wonderful. And that is a goal of the City of Tampa. You know, we have to have the means to do that, of course, and we'll probably talk about the budget.
What is your role at Heart?
So I recently became chairman of Heart. I was appointed by the mayor a couple of years ago in 2020 to be a board member of Heart, and I was nominated to become the chairman of Heart, and I feel very passionate about Heart and the mission that Heart does. Mass transit is something that is so important. It's the key link to economic activity, the key link to people getting to work. A lot of issues that we deal with poverty have the relevancy of our lack of properly investing in mass transit. I'm passionate about HART because of the people that HART serves. Yeah. Moms and dads who are just trying to get back and forth to work at everyday working family jobs to put food on the table. People with disabilities, something that's so important. A lot of people like my brother who go to jobs at places like Publix, like Chick-fil-A, yeah, they gotta need that. Our veterans, I mean, if you talk to people like my good friends, Colonel DJ Reyes and Colonel Jim Fletcher at the Veterans Treatment Court, a lot of the folks who go to the Veterans Treatment Court use HART to get to VA appointments, to get to their jobs, et cetera. So I want to make sure to be a champion for HART. Now in Tallahassee, we had a study file that would look at the possibility of dissolving HART. So I went to Tallahassee to talk with folks, some of the elected leaders who were looking at that study, to say that we should mend, not end HART, and saying that we have major issues with HART, right? We agree with that. And if filing that bill was a wake-up call to us, we were already woke, so to speak, on that issue. But the biggest thing with HART is that I want to work with everybody. I'm the chairman of HART, but we have members. I happen to be a registered Democrat. I was nominated or voted on by people who are Republican. It's a nonpartisan job. Mm-hmm. When I went to Tallahassee, I spoke to Republicans there, some of whom I'm friends with. And I said, I'm not here as somebody from Democrat Tampa to bash Republican Tallahassee. Those issues I talked about, people with disabilities, our veterans, et cetera, you don't have to be a Republican or Democrat to see the greatness of those issues. And I want to cut across that partisan spectrum for HART.
So I'm sorry to put you on the spot with this one, but I guess not, because I'm going to ask the question anyway.
Yeah.
Have you ridden the bus lately?
Oh, of course. I've probably ridden HART 24 times. Last time I went on, I believe, was with Congresswoman Kathy Castor. She was bringing a Congress member from Illinois who has a lot of jurisdiction over transportation issues in Washington, D.C., and we rode. And I just said at last night's HART board meeting that whenever you ride the bus, you meet the most interesting people. I met a gentleman who came from Cuba. He'd been here for only a few months, and he actually worked at the University Mall where we're at, which is funny. It's a very small world. So, yeah, I've probably been on the bus in my life 2-3 dozen times, and as an elected official a number of times. It's important to do that, but I've also gone just because I'm meeting somebody somewhere or whatever it may be. But we got to make sure that our buses are and that mass transit is something that we have community buy-in on from everybody in the community.
Well, what do you see as a challenge of that? Because I feel like people think of HART or the bus system as something for other people, not for them.
Yeah, sure.
And or as some sort of charity project.
Yeah, so that's a great question.
Instead of a city necessity.
Yeah, so the best government programs work when you have buy-in from everybody, including the middle class. And so one of the things I'm working on with HART is to have a public relations campaign for the people we serve. Just yesterday, I disclosed to the HART board something we've been working on for people with disabilities, taking on people that I know. There's a young man by the name of Sam Piazza who has Down syndrome. Wonderful guy. He lives with his family in Carrollwood, and he takes the HART bus to get to his job at PDQ. Sam's a wonderful young man. And I think about different individuals that I know. You know, when you talk to the public about my friend Sam and about different people like that, that's the buy-in. People are inherently decent. I believe that. The vast majority of us are. And people want to help people like Sam. So I do think there's buy-in. But on the larger issue of mass transit, you look at the penny sales tax, et cetera, you know, we got about 58% of voters in 2018 to say, please raise my taxes so that we can invest in transportation. So I do think there is some buy-in there. We just have to finish the job.
What's your dream? What would be your dream of HART? That's
a great question, is for it to be fully funded. Right now, HART is we are one of the most ill-funded regions whenever it comes to mass transit.
Yeah.
And we're woefully underfunded. One of the things that I really do to try to keep it consistent with HART is to reach out to the workers. I try to visit them as chair about once every 5 or 6 weeks. I was just there with some other board members on Labor Day. You know, those individuals are mechanics, our bus operators, dispatchers. Those are the middle of our middle class. That's the heart of Hillsborough County's working class, and we've always got to have their back. They're public servants.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in Minneapolis when I was
Sure.
very young, and you could just walk out into the street and go to the corner and wait for a bus. You didn't
Sure.
have to look at things. But you guys now have a new app where
Yes.
they can tell you where the bus is, so you don't have
Yeah.
to sit there and wait
Oh,
for
yeah.
a long time. That's new.
Yeah, and we do that to try to make things more accessible. We're a long way from some of our accessible cities. We don't invest in mass transit the way we should here in the city of Tampa. Whether it's HART, whether it's the streetcar downtown, different issues like that, we don't invest in it, and we should. And working families suffer when we
they
don't
do.
invest in mass transit.
And then, what people I think don't understand, maybe the wealthy people don't understand, is that if you don't have transportation for the working class, they can't
Yeah.
serve you.
Oh yeah, amen.
So,
and when a lot of these businesses look at investing in places, they look in how we invest in our institutions, in our mass transit, in public education, in training and apprenticeships. They want to make sure that we have a workforce that is trained, that is connected.
Yeah.
And in Hillsborough County, we're lacking in that regard, and we need to do better. And that means more public investments. Sometimes you got to have public investments to make the private sector come to life.
So you just opposed the mayor's recent tax hike of
Yeah.
16%.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that in the budget?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So a lot of times there's nuance and gray in things. Sometimes it's not yes or no, it's somewhere in between, or somewhere closer to the no and somewhere closer to the yes. So Mayor Castor, who I have a very good relationship with, I think she's a wonderful woman. Sometimes you agree, sometimes you disagree, proposed a 16% millage tax hike that would fund great things: affordable housing, transportation, parks, as well as public safety. I thought it was the wrong time for such a tax increase of 16%. We have inflation at 7.5%. We have property insurance premiums that have doubled over the last 5 years. We have car insurance that's skyrocketing in individual policies right now in the state of Florida. So, I told the mayor I wasn't opposed to a tax increase. Some people wouldn't say that because some people go, no tax increase, either because of philosophy or because they don't want to put themselves out there. My position was this: let's scale that tax back by 70%. We have a major public safety deficit in Florida. I'm talking about our cops.
Yeah.
I'm talking about our firefighters, building more fire stations, making sure that our cops are well protected and compensated, et cetera. I'm a proud supporter of our first responders. And I tell people, for me, that's not just about putting a bumper sticker on my truck. That's also about saying that I will put my political capital behind them. There are some who said no to any tax increase, and then there are some who said yes to the full tax increase. I've worked with Mayor Castor now for 5 years, almost 5 years. I find her to be a wonderful person. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree. This is one where we disagreed 70%, but I wanted to focus on that 30%. So my proposal, which didn't pass City Council, was to scale back the tax increase by 70%.
Yeah.
And to have it focus on our firefighters and our police officers. I don't think that the average home in Tampa that would have had to spend another $3 or $4 a month under my proposal would oppose spending under the $3 or $4 a month if it meant that our firefighters and our police officers were better empowered to do the work that they do every day. Like I always tell people, for me, supporting our first responders isn't just a bumper sticker slogan. I'm glad to put political capital behind it, which is what I did. So what I motioned for was to do a 70% scale back of the tax increase. So we would be raising taxes, and to have all that revenue dedicated to public safety. The vast majority of it dedicated to public safety. It didn't pass. But that was my position, which is, you take a look at the city of Tampa. We're growing. We're growing by leaps and bounds, and we're not building enough of our public safety infrastructure entities to keep up with that growth. Things like fire stations. You look here in the North Tampa area, Fire Station 13, near Busch Gardens, was the 54th busiest station in the United States of America. New Tampa, 4 out of the 6 stations with the longest response times in Tampa come from New Tampa. South of Gandy in South Tampa is growing by leaps and bounds still, and they need more fire infrastructure. West Tampa, lots of workforce housing there. West Shore, downtown Tampa. Look at where downtown Tampa was 30 years ago compared to now. 1 fire station then, 1 fire station now. So my view was, I'm willing to put political capital to help out the cops, to help out the firefighters, and the work that they do for us. That's what I did. Some people supported it in the public, other people didn't. But my pet peeve with the public is tell them where you stand, tell them what you're going to do, and do it. Yeah. After you speak with the public and you hear from the public, I think it's important for the public to know not just where you stand, but that you stand. And that's what I tried to do in this debate. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's great. I was wondering, that's my next question was, where could people follow you and learn about your policies and keep track of what you're doing?
So I'm available, obviously, through email, louis.viera at tampagov.net. I'm also on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. And I don't do, what's the other one? Those are the ones I'm on. I think there's a couple more that I'm just happen not to be on. But yeah, you can always follow me. I always try to stay active on social media because you got to let people know what you're doing and what your values are. I mean, it's my real honor to represent Tampa and to work for the city of Tampa. I love this city. This is a very unique city. We're a diverse city, and again, I have longtime roots in this city, and it's a real honor to serve this city. It's a patriotic endeavor for me and for all of us, all 7 members of City Council and the mayor.
Well, here at Tampa Bay Community Network, we are, all in on Tampa, and we love the city of Tampa as well.
Sure.
What is it that you love about Tampa?
That's a great question, is our journeys in Tampa and where we come from. I was asked that for a short film for our swearing in, and they wanted to do a film of us somewhere that meant something to us. I chose to go to a house in Ybor City where my dad, when he was 16 years old, went when he left Cuba in 1960 as a refugee fleeing communist Cuba. And for me, our Tampa stories are what make us great as a city. Yeah. Whether you're an Italian immigrant who came here at the turn of the 20th century, a Cuban immigrant who came here at the turn of the 20th century, an African American, an Afro-Cuban who can trace their roots to Martín Maceo, whatever it may be, or somebody who just got here leaving New York City or wherever to come to Tampa after COVID. We're a great city and we all have journeys, but a lot of the times our journeys speak to so much about the American dream. We got a lot of refugees in this city, people like my family. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's what makes Tampa great. It's our heart.
It's our heart. Mm-hmm. So we have, that's always my question. What is it about Tampa that makes us special and makes us unique? Mm-hmm. And it's a really hard question because, if you're looking for an icon that says Tampa, that's kind of hard to find. You've got the minarets at UT, you've got Ybor City, but what do you think Tampa stands for today in 2023?
Sure. That's a good question. Tampa for me is in the mainstream. You mentioned Minneapolis. You got cities like Minneapolis and Portland. They choose to go one way. You have other cities. For me, Tampa is a very moderate city politically. We don't go to either extremes. But we're also a very inclusive city. Yeah. But the biggest challenge of Tampa right now is the cost of living. It's the expansion of Tampa, people moving into Tampa. And a lot of people say, don't New York my Tampa, whatever there. My big thing is don't Miami my Tampa, which is don't make Tampa into a city where the middle class feel priced out and those who are working hard to get into the middle class feel that they don't got a snowball's chance in hell. That's the biggest challenge in Tampa right now is the attacks on the middle class. And it's not from any organized policy. It's just because of the post-COVID growth in Tampa, or in Tampa and in the state of Florida.
Yeah, what kind of policies could we put in place that would help people enter the middle class besides the ones that you've already mentioned?
That's a great question. I mean, we got to better invest in our public schools. I mean, I look at the state of Florida. I grew up under people like Lawton Chiles and Bob Graham. And when I look at the ideas of what makes Florida great, I think we got to make sure that government is empowered to help everyday families.
Wonderful. I'm hoping that in the future we can see to continue to have more, the inclusiveness that we feel here in Tampa. We really feel that. And to have, the classes kind of spread evenly around the city. And see us, really be a tourist destination as well as an industry place. Is that something that we do? Do we work on tourism here?
That's a great question. We have pivot points that we don't do as well as we should. Take a look at Busch Gardens, part of my district. Busch, I mean, has been abandoned over the last 20, 30 years. And so we do well in some areas. I think there has been wholesale neglect of the North Tampa area, in particular the Bush and Fowler areas. People have talked about starting a CRA, Community Redevelopment Agency designation for either Sulphur Springs or USF. I strongly support that. So we have a lot of wasted talent in that area, I'd say. We do well in some. Take a look at our airport. Amazing, first class. Take a look at institutions like the Strass Center and different things like that, world class. God bless them. But we have areas that we can improve in.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're lucky to be in North Tampa and be a part of that redevelopment of this area.
Sure.
We really want to see it burgeoning into the place that it can be, because we have USF here, we have the Veterans Hospital, we have a lot of great stuff in this area, and we'd like to see everyone. What do you think we could do to make that better?
In the North Tampa area?
Yeah.
That's a good question. So, the number one thing I've been focusing on here is public safety. I was trying to get in the budget this year a new fire station for the Fowler area, again, something that's very much so needed. I think it would be great if we could have a community redevelopment area designation for Fowler, Sulphur Springs. That is, you take an area and you designate it after a certain date, and all increase in taxable value can only be spent in that area when it comes to the city. You partner up with the county. That's something that I've strongly supported. It's all about timing for something like that, but I really do think that's the key. We also have to focus on development in this area. A lot of people complain about a lot of development in South Tampa. I motioned for the Planning Commission to come and do a study of the USF area, Fowler and Bush, to see what we can do to encourage development here through the code. This is a great place to live, and we want to encourage people to invest here residentially as well as through business development. So there is a lot that we can do. But again, often I find that the city getting their attention on this area is a struggle. It is. It is. It always is. There's always a focus on downtown. There's always a focus on other areas of the city of Tampa. And it has been. That's been part of my job. I'm proud of the fact over the last few years I've gotten a lot done for this district, but we still got a lot more to do.
What can we do to support your efforts?
That's a great question, which is, whenever the budget time comes around, make sure to engage with my office on what you think you need out here.
Okay.
And whatnot. I mean, this year in the budget, for example, I was looking for a brand new fire station for North Tampa area, K-Bar Ranch Park. K-Bar Ranch is a community out in New Tampa that always needs a lot of help when it comes to amenities from the city of Tampa. So, and that's likely not going to happen because of the lack of additional revenue, by the way. But yeah, just to lobby, show up at city council, make sure that council members know that you exist as a member of New and North Tampa, because a lot of times they hear from other areas of the city, but not from this area of the city. And me as a person, I value everybody's voice, no matter from what part of the city you are, but we just don't hear from this area enough, I say.
So engage more with the city council.
Absolutely.
When does the city council meet that are open to the public?
Thursday mornings at 9 a.m. we do, but you can always contact us by email. Every single person on city council, all of us, that's myself, Councilwoman Henderson, Councilman Carlson, Chairman Maniscalco, Miranda Clendenin, and Councilwoman Lynn Hertak, I think I got all of us, we're all very accessible. If you email us, we will respond. Our office will respond. You can request a time to meet. Many of us take meetings, etc. And the mayor, I mean, we're a bigger city, 400,000 people, but we got that small city vibe where you can just find your council member at a Starbucks or doing whatever and have a talk with them. That's something you don't get in a lot of those big cities, I say.
Well, that is just wonderful. So you heard it here, folks. Go to the city council meetings on Thursday mornings at 9 a.m. and email your city council members, because they are willing to talk to you. They want to hear what you have to say. They're interested in your point of view. And
I appreciate you all having me on, and always welcome and glad to come back. Hey, how are you? I'm Tampa City Councilman Louis Viera, and you're watching Tampa Bay Community Network.